I apologize if you can hear my cat throughout this entire video. He's just screaming for no reason. Why you gotta yell during mom video? He's okay. That's just what he does. Howdy! Welcome to my channel, Just Being Jewel. I'm Jewel, and today we're going to talk about my August wrap-up. It was a doozy. So as usual, I'm going to go from the books I like least to the books I like most. And I only read 4 books this month, but as I say every month, it is not how much you read that makes you a reader. It is that you like reading, and I enjoy reading. So let's get started. The first book we're going to talk about today is Wrath Gotta Sing by Maya Dean. I read this for Fantasy Book Club in my area, and I have very mixed feelings on it, but they're mostly negative. So let's talk about it. First of all, this book is a retelling of the Iliad, where Achilles is a trans woman. I have never read the Iliad, so I didn't know what I was walking into. I don't really know much about Achilles except for the whole, like, got dipped in the river Styx, except for his ankle, and that's, like, his whole downfall. I think it's important to mention that the author is a trans woman, so I tried to read it through the lens of knowing that, and to, when there was transphobia in the book, to read it as this is what the author has experienced as a trans person. So just, I do want to put out there that there's a trigger warning for anybody who maybe has a hard time with that. There was quite a bit of transphobia in this book. But some of the other issues I had had zero to do with the whole, you know, being written by a trans author or being told as a trans retelling. All of my issues were with the actual writing and the writing style and the decisions made. So the first thing that I want to say is that there were too many names for the gods. Each god had like 80 different names, and they were all used all the time. It was really hard to keep track of who they were talking about when. And I think that if you are somebody who doesn't know the Iliad, this would be really hard to follow. I also have heard from people who have read the Iliad, my partner has read the Iliad, that if you have read it, it's still hard to follow because they just change genealogy up. They decide that Athena's gonna be Achilles' mom and all sorts of stuff that doesn't make sense. The magic system in this is most definitely a soft magic system, which is always one of my pet peeves. I want rules, I want limitations to my magic, because I feel like when there aren't rules and limitation to magic, people just use it as a plot device, and whatever they want to happen can happen because, ooh, magic. So it felt like that this book definitely did that at times, in my opinion. I think that the magic not having hard rules meant the gods could suddenly do all sorts of weird, crazy things, and I was not a fan of it. There were a lot of battle scenes in this book, because it is taking place during the Trojan War. The battle scenes in this were very, very descriptive, and not in the like bloody, gory kind of descriptive way, more as the mechanics kind of way. Every single little movement of Achilles' body, like my arm moves this direction, my leg moves this direction, the chariot went this way, and the shield went this way, is described in detail, so that a battle, which is supposed to be fast-paced in my opinion, is supposed to be an intense moment, doesn't feel that way. It feels just very drawn out, and I didn't like any of the battle descriptions, and there were plenty of them. So speaking back on the magic portion, there is a character in here that I did like, Mariapi. She is not in the original Iliad from my understanding, and I really liked this character for the most part. She was the most intriguing and different and interesting character. They use pregnancy as a plot device in this, for both her and for Achilles, which I'm not a fan of. I have no desire to ever have children. I do not want to read about pregnancy. I don't want to read about motherhood. And I felt very uncomfortable reading those portions of this book. There's also a portion of the book where the characters are able to suddenly talk to dolphins. They learn all the languages of the world, and that includes dolphins. And the dolphins are really, really horny and make wildly inappropriate comments. And that was one of the weirdest parts of the book for me. That's like where it started to, that was a turning point for me. I was like, I'm getting through it. I'm okay with it. And then the horny dolphins happened, and I was like, nope, I'm out. Peace. See you guys. I'm done. But I still finished it because I wanted to partake in book club. Which is funny because the two people who run the book club didn't finish the book either. So life's too short to read bad books, so I should have quit it, but I stuck it through. I'm a completionist at heart. The end of this book has this absolutely wild fever dream ending that didn't make any sense and made me feel like, why is this a thing? There was also a concept in this book that I thought was really cool, and that's part of the reason I think I hung on for a while, where in the war, the people who are dying are considered sacrifices to different gods, and their death actually helps power the god. So gods are getting their power through all these deaths in this war, but there was nothing ever done with that concept. Cool concept, never did anything with it. No real follow through or execution on this cool idea. So I was bummed about that. I also was really uncomfortable with the slavery in this book. So I know that slavery is a part of the original Iliad, but from my understanding, talking to somebody, my partner who has read the Iliad, this book wildly differs in its storyline and its execution of the story. It is so drastically different that I believe that you could have left slavery out of it. If you're gonna have a fantasy novel, why do you have to include slavery in it? It's sort of the same feeling that I have about women in novels, in fantasy novels. So a lot of times, like especially in like older fantasy books, women are treated really poorly, and people are like, oh, but that's how historically it was in those times. And I'm like, but you made the story up. It's fake. There weren't dragons in those times, so why did you have to make it so that people were horrible to women? So I don't vibe with that. I don't jive with it. I don't read fantasy that has those concepts. So for me, I had the same feelings about slavery in this. I don't know why it had to have slavery. There is talk of Achilles beating one of her slaves, horribly beating one of her slaves, because her slave came out to her as also being trans, and she took it as an insult and thought they were mocking her. So she horribly beat her slave. And then there's also, she takes another slave who is a person of color, which I was very uncomfortable with as well. So the fact that slavery had to be in this was really weird. And it's also my understanding that in the original telling of the Iliad, this is what my partner's told me, so apologies if he got it wrong. He said he read it in high school. It's been a while. But in the original story of the Iliad, Achilles takes a slave who Achilles wants to then become a citizen of Greece. Like, he refuses to fight until that slave can become a citizen. So that didn't exist in this book. So if you're going to take a person of color slave, a trans person of color slave, and not because you're like, I believe in their rights and they should also be a citizen, but just cause they didn't seem to have too much of a plot point to having this slave, I wasn't a fan of it. I didn't like it, and it didn't, I felt uncomfortable reading it. And I get that there's things that you're supposed to feel uncomfortable reading, but it was like the not I'm learning, I'm growing kind of uncomfortable, that I'm recognizing things uncomfortable, I'm experiencing how other people feel uncomfortable. It was just uncomfortable, period. There was no purpose behind it. I mean, if you felt differently about this book, feel free to chime in and say so. I wanted to like it because I want to support LGBTQ plus books, but it wasn't for me. And I encourage you to, if you are a fan of Greek retellings, to, you know, read it for yourself and see what you think, because everybody has a different opinion. But for me, this wasn't it. Next book we're going to talk about, I'm like low-key not embarrassed, disappointed in myself that this is on here, but that is going to be Fairest by Marissa Meyer. This is like one of the offshoots, like the 3.5 edition of the Lunar Chronicles. And I read the Lunar Chronicles a long ass time ago. And this, I have one specific shelf dedicated as like my TBR shelf. These are books that I own that I need to read. And this had been on it for so long that I finally told myself I'm gonna read it. And I did, and I like busted through it in 2 days. And it was not worth it. I should have just put this book in an unhaul video and been done with it. But I have this strange compulsion that I can't let myself do that. But now I know in the future I'm never going to buy the 0.5s, the little editions, the short story collections, anything like that that goes with the series, because it's a money grab for popular series and I don't actually ever enjoy them. So this follows, for those who have read the Lunar Chronicles or know anything about the Lunar Chronicles, it follows Levana, who is the Queen of the Moon, and she's essentially the villain of the story of the series, and this is her side of the story. I didn't feel that she was validated in any of her decisions of any of the things that she did. I don't think that it explained her side at all. It was like basically cool motive, still murder. That was what I got out of this. It just confirmed that she's an absolutely freaking horrible person and deserved everything that she got towards the end of the Lunar Chronicles series. So I'm done though, and I put it on my finished shelf, and I never have to see it on my TBR shelves again, shaming me when I'm going to pick my next book. Next book that I finished was Golden Hand by Garth Nix. This is book 5 in the Abhorsen series. And I've been talking about the Abhorsen series a lot on my channel, but just a quick refresh for those who don't know. The Abhorsen series, it follows necromancers who are on the good side of necromancy, where they use a set of bells to basically tie the dead and keep things dead. One of the things I love about the Abhorsen series is sometimes there's a lot of time jumps and a lot of gaps between the stories. This particular one follows some characters from the 3rd book, and they're dealing with some trauma, and there's the world to save. I don't want to say too much, because if I do, it'll spoil earlier books in the Abhorsen series, but just know that there is a talking cat who is magical, and I'm a crazy cat lady, if you can't tell by the cats running around screaming while I'm filming this video. So, one of these book series that will always hold a special place in my heart. And the book of the month for me this month, the book that I liked the most, is going to be a surprise for a lot of people because it was very polarizing. But that's actually going to be Book of Night by Holly Black. And I am a Holly Black stan. I have loved Holly Black for years. I have the majority of Holly Black's collection and have read most of her books. And I'm talking way before the Folk of the Air series. Like, I have been into her since I was a teenager. Like, I'm talking modern fairy tale series. So this book is her first adult novel, and it follows Charlie, who is a con artist who is going through some rough times. And in this world, shadows can possibly take shape, can be used to steal things, can be used to commit all sorts of crimes and do all sorts of crazy things. And it's kind of like it's got its own culture, the act of using shadows magically. And in fact, it's called glomists are the people who use their shadows. Not everybody can do it. Only some people have a quote-unquote quickened shadow. So I think the reason that a lot of people, I know a lot of folks on YouTube didn't like this booktube, just in general, people that I follow were not fans of it. And I think it's because they were expecting the Folk of Air series, like 2.0, like the adult version of the Folk of Air series. Like, that's not what this book was at all. In fact, I think it was more like her Curse Worker series. If you have read it, the Curse Worker series is very like magical mafia vibes. And I can see why if you read the Folk of Air series and you love the Folk of Air, you'd be disappointed by this, because it doesn't have the fake court politics at all. You know, there's actually not that much romance, even though there's a very there's already an established romance that is featured heavily in it. It doesn't have too much romantic vibes, and you really have to pay attention with this because the details all very slowly add up. In fact, I am not a tabber, and I tabbed this book because I, very early on, I got the vibe. I was like, oh, this is like her Curse Worker series where it's almost like a mystery that you're solving. You're piecing everything together before the big reveal. So I started tabbing everything that I thought would be relevant and important to the ends, and I was trying to calculate and get all the pieces added up before the final reveal. I guess the complaints that other people had, I didn't have. I love this book. It was dark, it was grimy, and it was dirty, and it was the Holly Black that I know and love. She's not afraid to, even in her young adult books, have some pretty like dark topics. And this book, I will say the first half of the book, it's slow. You're getting world building, you're getting the story, you're getting the information that you need to really start picking up, and the last half flew by for me. And in fact, like the last, what is it, 2 pages? The last 2 pages blew my mind, and I can't wait for the next one. When do we get book 2? Because I don't care if I have to read 500 pages, 600, 700 pages to get the payoff that I felt in those last 2 pages where I was like, what? So I know that's a really unpopular opinion for some people, and everyone likes what they like, but I love this book. I think Holly Black is brilliant, and I will always be a fan of Holly Black. And I think maybe I should do a video where I rank my least favorite to my absolute favorite Holly Black books, because I have a lot of them and I could be talking for quite a while. So I just did the math, and the total page count for this month was 1,311 pages, which is pretty good. I didn't have very many shows at work, so I think that really helped in my ability to read a lot of books. You guys got to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time. You don't have to like and subscribe. We are a proponent of free will here, but I appreciate you being here, and see you next time.